Hey everybody, Dr. Regina Patrick here, your minister of motivation, and I'm sharing a word with you that's going to really be powerful. So come on, let's dive in. The word we're sharing today is entitled Setting Yourself Free Through the Power of Forgiveness. Setting yourself free through the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness, remember, is for you. It's never to excuse the behavior of the other person, but it's the gift that you can give yourself to go free. In this lesson that we're going to look at tonight, we're talking about the ability to set yourself free. It is imperative that we live a life consciously forgiving, consciously choosing to live a life of love, forgiveness, grace, and freedom. Forgiveness is our spiritual choice, and we get to make it very, very often. Everyone will always have multiple opportunities throughout their lives to forgive people. We forgive them their trespasses. We forgive them for their offenses. We forgive them for what they did do, shouldn't have done, could have done. We always got to be living in this consciousness of forgiveness. So we're letting people off the hook. They should have come through. They didn't. They failed us. They rejected us. They wounded us, offended us, hurt our feelings, abused us, talked about us, lied on us, whatever. We will always and constantly and consistently have opportunities to get hurt. However, we have to learn how to cast the care of our pain on God and forgive. Listen to this. Offenses and pain comes in multiple sizes, shapes, multiple areas. Some infractions are not nearly as serious as others. However, they can offend us and hurt us. So again, whether it's a small thing or whether it's a major betrayal, hurt is hurt and pain is pain. And we have to learn how to not become victims of our hurt and victims of our pain, but rather we need to learn how to become victors and become heroes over our hurt. A person who takes on a victim mentality, even though the pain is real, the infraction is real, the abuse, the hurt is real, but we have to come to a point where if we're going to live our best life, live our dream life, live the abundant life, that we're going to have to deal with forgiveness from a different perspective, as opposed to being a victim. And this is what a victim does. You've been hurt and you truly have been victimized. But in order to get free, you've got to stop repeating the same story again and again and again. Telling everybody who will slow down and listen what happened to you, who hurt you, how bad they hurt you, and so forth and so on. We need to learn how to become heroes of our journey. And we tell a different story with a different narrative. Yeah, we also got hurt. Yeah, we also got abused and victimized. However, there are people that have learned the art of literally taking their story and raising it for God's glory. And they tell their story from a different perspective. The pain is there, yes, but the promotion is also there, because some kind of way they've learned to transform their bad experience into empowerment. I often think of two women that come to mind almost instantly that were abusive, negligent, gut-wrenching betrayal in their marriages. One was Joyce Myers. The other one was Tina Turner. But they didn't let that abusive, neglectful, horrific pain of their lives determine their destiny. And they were able to transform their bad experiences, y'all, into empowerment. By forgiving, they were able to go on and experience amazing, amazing futures, amazing lives that have touched multiplied millions. So forgiveness is not just a one and done. You don't have one experience in which you forgive a person. When Jesus was asked how often should people forgive, 7 times, he said, nah, 70 times 70. 70 times 7. Why is that? He was giving us the truth that it has to become a lifestyle. You have to just form your heart and your mind to live a life of a forgiving person. So our perception has to change. The way we look at things in life have to change so that we can learn how to live this abundant life by tapping into the power of the gift of forgiveness. Listen, thinking about your past pain and who did what and who said what and who stole what and who robbed you of what and who didn't come through. Listen, thinking about it and rehashing it and reliving your past pain, you can't change any of that. You cannot change your past pain, but you definitely can change your outlook and how you feel going forward. You can change your present, and you absolutely can change your future. I've seen so much as a pastor. I've seen so much. I've heard so much. I tell you the truth, but nothing shocks me anymore. It really doesn't. And I've seen every form and heard of everything: church hurts, family church hurts, betrayals on every level. But the answer is always the same. You cast your care and your pain on God, and you forgive. I shared this earlier. It's a true story about a minister, a very prominent minister from the Detroit area, whose sister married just a con artist, a shyster. And this man weaseled his way into this pastor's. This pastor's name was Jack Bowling. And this fellow weaseled his way into this family by way of dating and courting the younger sister. And he ended up marrying Pastor Jack's younger sister. And when this young man weaseled his way into their family, later on they discovered it was because he wanted access to their money and their influence. And he got some kind of way them tied up and tangled up in some kind of financial fraudulent deal that fell completely apart. And he took the money that he stole from this family and ran off, left their sister and ran off with another woman. Somebody say, my. And Pastor Jack was horrifically, he just absolutely began to hate this man. And to the point that it began to affect his ministry and life. He would tell everybody to slow down. That is a weasel. That man is horrible. He's a shyster. And he talked about him. And he would get people listening and they would go, oh, Pastor Jack, you're right. He is a horrible human being. Shame on him. Shame on him. And after a couple of years went by, the Pastor Jack's bishop came and told him, he said, look, man of God, look, you're going to have to do better. You're going to have to stop ridiculing this man. You're going to have to stop running his name down. And Pastor Jack thought, why? It's the truth. And he said, yeah, it is the truth, but it's not helping you. It's affecting you so negatively. It makes you look so wounded, so hurt, and it makes you look unforgiving. And it's not a good look for a man of the cloth. It's not a good look for a believer. And it's affecting you. And the man of God began to share with the bishop began to share with the man of God, with the pastor, that it was just not, it wasn't healthy for him. And it was affecting his preaching, his ministry, and the way people viewed him, because they saw him as this bitter man, this bitter, angry man. And he didn't realize that it had gotten into the very crevices of his soul. And he couldn't stand this brother-in-law of his, this ex-brother-in-law of his. So his bishop told him, he said, I want you to do something. I want you, every time you call his name, I want you to pray for him. I want you to begin to speak well of him and share a good thing about him. And Pastor Jack had told his story about his no good brother-in-law over and over and over, but he decided to obey his bishop. And he said, okay, I'm going to stop repeating it, what he did to me and my family. I'm going to stop talking about it, and I'm going to do my best to start to pray for it. And y'all, after a while, it wasn't overnight. It didn't happen instantaneously. But after constantly praying for this man's well-being, for his salvation, for his deliverance, praying that things would work well for him. Do you know what? It was fast forward some time. I mean, a long period of time had passed, and then Reverend Jack realized he didn't feel quite as angry. He didn't feel quite as heavy. His heart wasn't as heavy. He didn't feel quite as bitter toward this man. He could hear his name in a conversation without blurting in, all calling him a weasel and ugly names. And he realized that his heart had actually changed toward him. And fast forward, some more time goes by, and one day, out of the blue, out at a red light, Pastor Jack was standing in his car at the red light, and he glanced over and sees this gorgeous, brand new, spanking, brand new, beautiful Mercedes-Benz pull up, and he's admiring the car. He's looking at the wheels. He's looking at the detail of the car, and he's really, really admiring the car. And lo and behold, he glances up at the driver, and who is it, y'all? None other than the former brother-in-law whom he hated. But he let down the window when he realized him, and it was an instantaneous response. It wasn't fake. It wasn't fraudulent. He didn't have to muster it up. He didn't roll down the window and say, you old scoundrel, weasel, you no good, so-and-so. Nah. He said, hey, how you doing? Beautiful car. Man, you looking good rolling in that. And he said, it's nice to see you. You take care. And in just the amount of time that the red light permitted them to have just a few words, and the ex-brother-in-law, his eyes were wide, and he wasn't 100% sure what kind of greeting he was going to get from Reverend Jack, his former brother-in-law. But it was pleasantry, and it was from the heart. And the thing that Reverend Jack put in his book is that he meant it. Those well wishes and those things that he said to congratulate him on that beautiful new car and told him he was rolling, looking good in it, and it was nice to see him. He meant that. Where did that come from? From a change of heart. Forgiveness had set Reverend Jack free, and he was no longer in bondage to this man. What a wonderful story. Listen, I've told this story many times, but I think it always bears repeating. There was a lady, and this is a true story as well, that gone in a grocery store. This was years and years and years ago. And she went in the grocery store. She gave the woman a bill to pay for her groceries, and the woman didn't give her the right change back. The clerk kind of cheated her, but not intentionally, but she didn't give her the lady the money back that she was due. And she brought it to her attention and said, listen, ma'am, I believe I gave you a 50. You didn't give me the proper change back. And the clerk was sighing and hissing and, just like you getting on my last nerves kind of thing, But she made the correction, gave the lady her change back. And as the lady was walking out of the store, the customer was walking out of the store, she told the young man who was bagging her groceries, she said, everybody at this store has a real nice attitude. They're real nice people. She don't even need to be working with y'all with that bad attitude. She cheated me out of my money. I had to bring it to her attention. And the young boy that had been bagging her groceries said, oh, ma'am, no. She's just having a bad day. That is the nicest, sweetest, nicest lady ever. But 2 days ago, her 6-year-old son, a 6 or 7-year-old son, was hit by a car. And he's not in a life-threatening situation, but he does have to undergo surgery on one of his legs. And say she's just worried. She's just worried, but she's a nice lady. And all of a sudden, the lady who got cheated out of her money by this lady by mistakenly cheated anyway. She said she had so much compassion. When she got the gist of the story of what this poor lady had been going through, she said she understood why her mind wasn't on her work. She understood, and she was filled with compassion once she knew the whole story. See, sometimes we don't know enough of the person's whole story. We don't have enough of the background information. And so she said from that day forward, it was impressed in her heart that from that moment on, that she would have a natural reaction of compassion. So if you don't know the whole story, if you don't have all of the details of what a person's been through or going through, then you judge them. But you could be judging them so wrong. So if we learn to give grace and compassion before we have all the details, it can become a choice, a decision that we make and live by. We can choose to have compassion on others without knowing their whole backstory. Compassion is just the way we have decided that we would think about that. So when somebody's rude in the store, somebody's rude in the restaurant, or you don't feel like you got the kind of, a waitress was a little bit rude, or somebody, you walk in the store and instead of somebody saying, may I help you, they kind of ignore you. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's choose compassion without knowing the story, because we're good people. We got good hearts and we have good intentions, but sometimes we judge prematurely. And if we only knew what that person really was encountering, what they really had been through in the last 24 to 48 hours, we wouldn't come at them like we would kind of come at them. So by choice, let's learn to forgive and live with compassion. Forgiveness and freedom goes together. When you forgive, you automatically get your feelings free. We can be emotionally set free from anger and resentment and bitterness once we forgive. It's beautiful. A young lady in the store was reaching up high to get something off a shelf, and all of a sudden she felt whap right on the top of her head. And she turned around and went blankety blank, 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 blank. And oh my God, was she embarrassed. Because when she turned around, she looked into the face of a blind man who was simply trying to extend his cane, and he whapped her across the head. And besides that, y'all, he had on a collar. He was a priest of some kind. So, and she had read him his rights. What is that? No compassion. But once she knew the backstory, once she had enough evidence, okay, she had compassion. She felt sorry, and she began to apologize to him. She was out apologizing him. He was saying, oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were standing in front of me. And she said, no, no, no. I'm the one that's sorry. Please accept my apology. I'm so sorry. What's going on here? Y'all, we have to know. We got to get the backstory. And if we don't have all of the information, we got to stop jumping to conclusion with anger and resentment and ready to fight and cuss people out and tell them all. No, stay calm. Stay in a state of compassion. Forgiveness has to be a way of life for us. We got to practice it, because practice makes perfect. Whenever we're upset and resentment and anxiety and stress over a situation that we need to exercise forgiveness is, we get into a mental prison. And just like a natural prison, you're not free. You're not free to be creative. You're not free to express love. You're not free to have joy. When you allow other people to make you mad and make you angry and make you bitter, you are in bondage. So God is telling us that we can be free. Forgiveness is that key to our freedom. Let me just run a few things by you. We're to pray for our enemies. 1 Peter 3:9 says, listen, don't go and repay evil for evil and insult for insult, but rather extend a blessing. Matthew chapter 5, I tell you, pray for your enemies. It says, love your enemies and pray for those that persecute you. Ephesians 4:32, be kind, compassionate, forgive one another as God has forgiven you in Christ. Wow. And Luke chapter 6, it says, bless them that curse you and pray for them that despitefully use you. Let me conclude with this. True story again. I know a lot of true stories. I have a lot. But I wanted to share this one because this one was just so powerful. Man named Al, he was raised around violence. His parents fought, viciously with each other. They had a tumultuous relationship, and their home was always filled with chaos and drunkenness and cursing and fighting, and the children would try to come between the parents, and yeah. It was just a mess. About age 25, this boy had been getting in trouble all his life, all the way through school. And by the time he was 25 years old, he had been sentenced to 5 years in prison. While he was doing this 5-year stint in prison, he got favor with this chaplain. And this chaplain took him under his wing. And he said, Al, you're going to have to change, son. He said, if you don't, you're going to end up right back here with way more than 5 years. You're going to cause your life to be a life of misery if you don't learn to really change. And he began to mentor Al, and Al said, yeah, I really do want to change. I hate the trajectory that my life is on right now. So this chaplain mentored Al and worked with him, and he really labored with him. And one of the key things he began to share with him was on forgiveness and walking in love. And so Al did his 5 years, and y'all, in 5 years he got out. He was a completely different human being. He didn't think the way he used to think. He wasn't violent. He didn't drink. He used drugs. He was clean and sober. And he came home to start a fresh new life. He met and married a beautiful girl named Althea. And for 5 years, they had a wonderful relationship. Great marriage. It was going quite well. Well, like most relationships, they hit a really bad bump, hit a really bad turn, and things began to sour in this marriage. And Althea left. She left him. And he thought about it for a while. He thought, it is what it is. But as he really began to really ponder it, he thought, no, I don't want to be like my parents. I want to have a different experience. I want to be the man of my home, and I want to take control of my life, and I want a different outcome. So he began to really pursue his wife. Hard with, let's do therapy, let's go to church, let's go to the pastors, the whole yard, whatever it's going to take. And for nearly 2 years, he really sought her after trying to heal this marriage, trying to get her to come back home, but she wasn't having it. He had a friend, a very best friend, who knew his heart and also knew his wife. And he said, well, maybe he can help me, So he started telling his friend Bruce, just talk to Althea for me. Talk with her, take her to lunch, talk with her, tell her what I'm doing, what I'm going through, how, I really miss her. I want this to work, yeah. So Bruce was doing his part. He was running, interception. He was talking to Althea and spending time with her and literally doing what Al asked him to do. Y'all, but after a while, it was nearly 2 years, Althea and Bruce had an affair, and they hooked up. Well, when Al found out about it, everything from his past came roaring back. The violence, the anger, the resentment. And I mean, he started looking for Bruce. He had it in for Bruce so bad. And he looked for Bruce and looked for Bruce, but by the grace of God, he couldn't find him. And this went on for several months. And he was so bitter, so bitter about the betrayal. And he thought, what's the point of trying to live right when this is going to bite you anyway? But he couldn't sleep at night, and he was like, he was just literally tempted to go back to drugs and back to drinking and just throw in the towel like, look, I can't do this. I can't do this. But he was struggling because he said, I don't want my life to be for naught. And he kept thinking about the chaplain. And the chaplain told him, if you don't live as a changed man, that this jail is going to be your home forever. And he said, I don't want that. I don't want that. So he was advised immediately to go into therapy, go into counseling, get a coach. And that's exactly what he did. And the first thing that he was advised, because he was in such anger, he was dealing with so much anger and resentment. But he said, I don't want to be the old man again. I don't want that man to take over my soul no more. And the first thing that he was advised by the therapist, he was told, you got to forgive Bruce. And he was like, forgiving? Wow. Well, come on now. Really, is we going to start right there and say, yeah. It's imperative to forgive him. Because as long as you don't forgive him, you're already locked up. He's in your head. You're already in trouble. You don't have no peace. You can't sleep. You're thinking about going back to drugs. You're struggling now with violent thoughts. He says, you got to work on this forgiveness. He said, how? How? And this was something that was taught through therapy to him. Pray. Pray. Use the principle of Scripture and pray for your enemy. Bless him. Bless him. And he said, how? After what he did to me, how? And they gave him a simple message, and we refer to it as the prayer of forgiveness. And he says, pray these 7 words, and you say this out loud. I pray for Bruce. And I pray, and here was the 7 things. I pray that God, you would fill his heart with love, joy, peace, health, wealth, wisdom, happiness. Those 7 things. And he said, every time Bruce come to your mind, I want you to say, Father, I lift up Bruce, and I'm asking you to touch him and fill his heart with love, joy, peace, health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness. And he said he started doing it because it was the only thing he could do. And he kept saying it, and he kept praying it. And at first his fist was clutched when he was said it, stomach was hurting when he was said it, but he continuously did it. And he started doing it by faith. He didn't feel it. He didn't even think he meant it, but he did it anyway. And then he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and he kept doing it. And every time Bruce would hit his mind, instead of saying, I'm going to knock his teeth out, he would pray this prayer over him. Glory to God. And he kept doing it. This is a true story. And it didn't take long before he began to think of Bruce like, my goodness, he was my friend at one point. And I don't know what got into his heart that he would think that this would be okay. And I don't know what got into my wife's heart to think that this would be okay. But he began to feel compassion for them. And he started to earnestly pray for real, and pray because he wanted them both happy. And he, from the depths of his heart, did forgive them with the help of the Lord. He forgave the wife and wished her nothing but peace and joy and happiness, even if that meant with Bruce. And what happened to Al? True story. A few years later, he stayed in therapy, stayed in counseling, kept practicing the principles of these scriptures. And he met another lady, Sheila. And Al and Sheila started to date. And a few years later, Al married Sheila. They have a beautiful home with beautiful children. And he went on to become a very, very successful, guess what? Therapist that helped transform the heart and minds of other people. True story. Forgiveness is our key to freedom. It does not excuse the other people's bad behavior, but it sets you free from not just what was done to you, but what was done in you. Freedom comes through forgiveness. Amen.